Okay, so this is T7 case problem 2, the spice bowl. And I have my area kind of set up already, and I have my tab open so that I can see the example already. And I'm just going to read the summary because I do always like to get to know the issue, right? I can solve a problem better if I know what it is rather than just blindly skipping ahead. So I'm going to read that. The Spice Bowl. Rita Sato, or Sato, is the manager of the web development team for the Spice Bowl, an online grocery store specializing in gourmet spices. She's asked you to create web forms for the site. You will start your work by developing a payment form used to collect billing and credit data from the store's customers. The form should include validation tests for credit card numbers to ensure the card numbers match the correct credit card number patterns. I suspect we may do more than one of those. The page should also include a form in which users can log into their Spice Bowl account. The figure below shows a preview of the page you will create for Rita. So there's the preview. Looks like many other websites that I've been to that have credit card information or that accept credit card information. So hopefully there's no surprises there. And based on what this looks like, we have all this stuff on the right is already taken care of for us, the header and the footer, and we're only going to be responsible for this payment form area. All right, so introduction, that's what I just did. And now we're ready to get started. So open the payment.html and the validate.css, that's one that we'll be working in. And we're going to put your name and date. My name is Joseph. Today's date is irrelevant for this solution. Return to the HTML and link the sbforms.css and the validate.css style sheets to the document head. Add a script element to load the SB script. Okay, so I like to not repeat myself when coding, so I'm going to copy and paste these CSS files that are already linked and just change their names. So SB forms and SB validate. Also, if I copy and paste, then I won't have any spelling errors. There is not a script in here already, so I am going to type that. So the script is the sbscript.js. So script, and we give this a source file, not an href. Right, and then I'll just type in the file name .js, and script also has an opening and a closing tag. And the reason it has an opening and closing, but the link doesn't, is because I could write this script and I could actually not include a file name and just include the type, which I'm going to do. The type is equal to, text slash JavaScript. Okay. Strictly speaking, that's not required, but it still is nice to have. But I could take that out of there and I could actually have my JavaScript written right here. We don't in this case, so it's just going to be a one line, but the script tag does open and it does close. Right, so that finishes that. Right, there's no special rules on the script tag, nothing like that, no attributes to set. And then this says I won't be tested on that, but I will be tested on it when I get to the next step, right? So the next step is the page will contain a form in which customers can log into their account. Directly after the SB logo image insert a form element with ID login. I don't remember seeing that. I didn't see that in the example. ID login, have the form use this URL and as the action and send via the post. Okay, so directly after this image tag, this is where we're going to put a form, and it doesn't say any elements yet, so I'm just going to do the form. And it says it's going to be a form with an ID of login. So the ID is equal to login. I want to close the form before I forget to close it. And then I'm going to add these other things in. All right, so this URL, this is the action. It has to be the action because that's the only thing that we do, we set with a URL in a form here. So the action equals, and I'm going to leave it blank and copy and paste this right in there. So that way I don't have a mistake. And we're going to use the post method. That is my preference. Right, you should use the post method for all your forms unless you specifically want to use the get method. I know get is the default, but for you and me, post is our default, and we will only use get when we want get, because the get method is going to put all this form information right into the URL, and we don't want to do that most of the time. All right, so that probably isn't going to do anything visually. No, nothing visually. Oh, except I did include my CSS. So now I can get this checkbox here and get the little robot to tell me whether or not I did a good job. And I did. All right, MindTap is using, it's looking specifically for this code that I typed in. Okay. It's looking for an element of form login, and it's looking to see if I set the action to this value. And then it's looking for that form again to see if I set the method to this value. And so it's programmatically looking to see if I did what I was instructed to do. Now moving on to what's in the login form. Within the login form, insert the following fields and controls. I have two text inputs, one with the ID user box for the username field and the placeholder username, and one with the ID password box for the password field and the placeholder text password. So this says text input, but it's a password field. So I should probably make it a password box. So I'm going to do the first one, and it's going to be of type text. And it says the ID is user box, and the placeholder equals the text of username. So what the placeholder is going to do, and I'll refresh this when it's ready and show it, is it will have this value put in gray into the box and give the user some sort of idea what belongs in there. All right, so this next one, I'm going to make a password type because it's a password, and we shouldn't use a plain text box for a password because then when someone types a password in there, it will be visible. All right, the ID is PWD box, and the placeholder is password. All right. Input elements are self-closing. Okay, so it's closing itself right here. And if I refresh the page, we should see username and password in these boxes here. That's where we put them. And if I type in some characters in the username, the placeholder goes away as soon as I do. And in the password, same thing happens, but I don't get to see my text. Okay, so you can't see what my password is if you're looking over my shoulder. So I should be able to get that. We'll see if they specifically wanted a text box or not for that password field. I think it should be a password box. Okay. Moving on to payment form. So we've finished the login form. Now insert a payment form directly below the payment form H1 header. All right, and I have payment form H1 header here. Insert a form element that uses this action, this URL, and also the post method. Assign the web form the ID of payment. Okay. Form. And I'll close it because I don't want to forget my closing tag. I have a lot to type. I might forget it. Okay. ID equals, it's supposed to be payment. And the action equals, I'm going to leave that blank and come back. The method equals post again. All right, now I'll copy and paste this action in here, that URL into the action. This is the file that when the form gets submitted, it's going to submit the information to this file on the internet. And then that file is going to process it however it's going to process it. All right, so that was actually it for that step. All right, next step is field sets, and this is what we're going to use to organize some of our fields here. We'll use it to, it will put like a little border around groups of fields. Okay. If we go back to the first page and we look, so we'll have this top part will be a field set and this bottom part will be a field set. That's what it looks like it's going to be. And we'll see if that's correct. Insert a field set with the ID billing to the payment form. Add the legend billing information required to the field set. And within that field set, add the labels and input boxes specified in the figure ball. So I have all these labels that have to go in there. What the label is, its data field, its control ID, its data type, and whether or not it is required. All right, so kind of a lot of things in there. And it says I don't need to enclose label or input elements within div tags. So I'm just going to be putting a field set with the legend and then label input, label input, label input, label input for all of those. All right, so we'll get started with that. Start with the field set, of course. It is going to wrap around everything else. All right, and I wrote the open and close because I don't want to forget the close. Give myself some space. This field set had an ID, ID of billing. We may or may not use that ID for some sort of CSS later. Okay, and we have a legend. So I'm going to do the legend, of course, first because it goes at the top. It's similar to a caption in a table. Not exactly the same, but it is similar. And I don't want to have any spelling errors, so I'm going to copy and paste the legend right into its place. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inputs, and they're all text. One of them is a telephone number. Okay, and so that's also an input, but it'll be type telephone. So I'm going to write label for each one. Oops, of course, a typo. All right, a label, and then I'm going to write my input. I'm leaving this blank. Type equals text, or kind of blank. Required. Okay, so there's an old and a new way to do required. All right, let me quickly find the page for that. So Mozilla developer page for required actually says it should say required equals required. Okay. The MindTap solution actually just has the setting to be required by itself, the keyword required, like I have here. I'm going to set it the long way. It is the proper way to do it. I'm going to set it this way and see if MindTap accepts it, or if they really want it to be the other way. And if they accept it this way, I'm going to continue doing it that way, and I won't go back. So they did not tell me, or they did tell me this is going to be the name, and this is going to be the ID. So type equals text. I'm leaving this blank except for the type equals text and the required, and I'm going to copy this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and then come in and fill in the missing data. So that's 1, 2, I want a space, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, and I can't copy and paste these because this is an image, so I'm just going to have to type them all in. First name, and this is called F name, and the ID is first box, and that's that one. Last name, and the name is L name, and the ID is last box. So the names and the IDs are different on all of these, and that is because the name is actually the variable name that gets sent with the form to the action processor, and the ID is what we're going to use internally for any kind of CSS rules that we write. All right, street address, the name is street, ID is street box, capital B, street address 2, parentheses too. We want to get these exactly right with the text that's going to be visible. And MindTap will be able to see that. And if it looks visually a little bit different, the word can shrink and it can set spacing off. And on a question that they test with a picture, it can really throw that off. On a question that they test by looking for strings of text within your code, it will most certainly throw that off. Definitely every character is important because one wrong character will have the program doing the wrong thing or nothing, more likely. And so it's important that we don't have any mistakes. And these names are important because when it sends that information, given that variable name, somebody else probably made that code. And if we name it the wrong thing, their code's not going to execute and it will be our fault. All right, the last one is phone. And we need to change the type from text. It's not a text, it's a DEL telephone. Okay. Okay, so I have all of these input now. I don't think I have any problems with it, any typos. If I refresh my page, hey, look at that. We got a lot done already. And we have some CSS done for us already too. That's great news. All right, got to check on that. Thanks, little robot buddy. Next is create a data list with the ID state list. Ooh. Containing two-letter abbreviations of all the states. You can use the list of abbreviations in the state.txt file. Apply the data list to the state box input text box. So I'm going to find the state box right here, and the way I'm going to apply this is it's a data list. So I will say, and I'll just type it in at the beginning of this input, I'll say that the list for this is equal to, it wants us to use the ID state list. So we'll use that ID. List is equal to state list for this input. And then we need to have a data list, all lowercase, and we need to give that the same ID. That way they match up. If they have a different ID, they don't match up. Right, and I can close my data list. Right, and then they said that in this text file are all the two-state abbreviations. That is a lot of typing. Okay, for many, many, many. Right, I have the list in a file already done. So today I will cheat. Okay, so they're all in alphabetical order. There's every state, and it is an option that goes into each of these data lists, right? Each one is an option with a value of whatever that state's two two-letter abbreviation. Okay, and when you need to make one of these, all right, the first time you ever make one, you got to do it the hard way. And then every time you want to make one again for the rest of your life, you copy and paste it, because the 50 states, they really don't change. Okay. So there we go. That's how that works. Okay. We click on that and we get our list. And whichever one I click, oh, doesn't want to work for me very well. There we go. It's kind of inconvenient. Maybe we'll do something about that in a future step. Who knows? Okay, but I did the data list and get the check mark for that. Awesome. Now we got to do a regular expression. And I'm kind of worried about that one because, and like I've said a bunch of times in class, if you solve a problem with regular expressions, now you have two problems. That's my favorite thing to say about regular expressions. They're very delicate, they're very finicky. You have to get this whole string of characters 100% right, and if you don't, you can have a big problem. So I'm not going to type them. When I have to do regular expression things, I go online and I find a regular expression tool to help me. And that's the way I work with regular expressions. Right? I don't want to rely on myself with them. I want to rely on some tool that I think that I trust. Okay, so I have two regular expressions to use. One is for a zip code field, and the other is for the phone number field. And I don't really want to dive into how they work, but I'll look at a little bit. All right, the zip code field, we have the starting character. We're looking for a digit, 5 digits, okay? And then we're looking for possibly a dash and 4 more digits, okay? And then it will end. So let's go ahead and put this in to the zip code field. And the way this goes in is in the expression pattern. So it's called pattern. And if I put this pattern into this zip code field, it will mean that anything that you type in there, once you finish typing it, it will have to fit into that pattern or it will not be accepted. Okay? And this is a required field. So it's definitely going to be checked that it's not empty. Right? And if it's not empty, it has to have this. Right? And moving on to the next one, this is much longer, but we're looking for 10 digits, and maybe that's the end, or we're looking for some weird combination of 3 digits with parentheses, or maybe not with parentheses, 3 more digits, a dash, and 4 digits. So that's kind of what this one says it's looking for. Right? If you don't understand anything about regular expressions, don't worry about it. Just copy and paste it. I know a little bit about regular expressions, and I'm just going to copy and paste it. All right. So this is placeholder, and not placeholder, excuse me. This is pattern equals, paste that regular expression, and I assume that they know what they're doing. Okay. And now if I was to type this in, refresh this, and it doesn't do anything until it's time to submit. So this is going to probably programmatically look through my code and look for this regular expression. I'm pretty sure I pasted it right. My little robot fan says I'm good. I'm going to take a little check here. Yeah, it's looking for those codes in there. All right, so we did that page. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to do another field set below this one, and this is going to be for the credit card information. Awesome. So create a field set with the ID credit card, which you use to insert credit card fields. All the credit card fields go in the field set of credit card. That makes sense. We're going to add the legend and call that credit card. And we're going to also write required in that one as well. Because not only is your information required, but so is your credit card. If you don't put both in, you don't make a purchase. All right, so just like I did with the last one, I'm going to put the field set, then I'm going to put the legend, okay, which again, that is very similar to a caption in a table. And I'm going to copy and paste this because I don't trust that I won't have a typo. Oops, and I almost forgot. I need the ID of credit card. Okay, make sure my capitalization is correct. And that was a simple step. Right. So we have the second area begun. Card label within the credit card field set. Insert another field set containing 4 label elements. So we have a field set inside of a field set this time, with each label element belonging to the card label class. Within each of the 4 label elements, we have a field set inside of a field set, and it has labels inside of that. And inside of that, insert an option button for the C card field value. American Express, Discover, Master, and Visa. Make C card a required field. Follow each option button with an image element containing the image of its corresponding credit card. So one for each of these 4. Using image, using these are the image file names. Okay, so let's start simple. Start at the first step. We have our main field set. Within this field set, insert another field set. Okay, another field set containing 4 label elements. Okay. Four of these, 2, 3, 4. Each element belonging to the card label class. Class equals card label. And I'll just copy and paste this. Four of them. Within each of the 4 label elements, insert an option button. Okay, they mean a radio button. Option button, they mean a radio button. And we can do that. And we'll need 1 for each one. So the first one goes here, the second one here, and so on. So the first one is going to be C card field value. Okay. So that is name equals C card. And the value of these. So this first one, I'll do them alphabetically as they have right here, and I'll say value equals mx, and this is a required field. I'm going to do it the long way, okay? And this type equals radio. It says option, and that's the same as radio, okay? It threw me at first, but it's a radio button. And what we do with the radio button, these are all going to have their own label. We put the input inside the label. That's something that we can do that automatically associates the two things. And alternatively, we could say the label is for something else, something we didn't actually do in all these other labels. We can probably get away with that for now, but we should have them say for what they are on these other ones. We could say, so this one should say for, and whatever the ID is has to match what it's for. And what that makes it do is when a user clicks on the label, the text label, they'll be able to actually get their cursor into that box. And also, you can kind of make out when I hover over the label, it gives me the similar effect as hovering over the input itself. So either or, you can say that the label is for the input, or you can actually put the input inside the label. When follow each one with an image containing the appropriate image. So this one's going to have that American Express image. So image is img. The source is going to be that file. I'm going to put the first one in here. It doesn't say to do anything else with the image. So I guess we'll just do that. And I'm going to copy and paste this into all the other ones. And like I usually like to do, I'm going to copy and paste it from the bottom up. And then I'm going to come back in and change them all. They should all have the same input name. That's how radio buttons work. You give them all the same name, and that's how they know they're going to work together. So I give them all a different value. That way, when the form is submitted, that value gets submitted of whichever one is chosen. So the second one is Discover. Third one is MasterCard, and the last one is Visa. And I can change the image. Okay, and now if I refresh my page, I have my 4 radio buttons, and the image and the button are connected to each other because they're both inside the label. So I can hit the button itself, or I can hit the image. Right? If I disassociate the label somehow, then that part will break. Right? So I should have this all done correctly, and I can get the check mark for that. Great. Next step, credit card number. After the credit card field set, that's all this. Insert a label containing the text credit card number associated with the card box input control. Create an input text box with the ID card box for the card number field. Make the field card number required and have the field value follow the regular expression pattern for credit card numbers using the regular expression from the file. That's a mouthful, but one step at a time. Insert a label. All right, so this goes after the field set that I just made. Hmm. I'm going to put it after the one I just made. Insert a label using this text. All right, label credit card number. Associate that with the card box input, which I haven't made yet, but I will associate it with the card box input. So it's for the card box. Now I will create the card box input. All right, ID of card box, of course. Card number field. All right, that's going to be the name of it. All right, card number field. Make the card number required and put this regular expression in there. So required equals required. I'm doing it the long way again. Right. And use this pattern for the regular expression. I'm going to close it. I have to go get that pattern from the regular expression file. Phone number, zip code, credit card, regular expression. Copy all of that. And paste all of that into the pattern. Okay. There's a different regular expression for the different cards. They don't all follow the same format. I'm not going to go over any of that. I'm just going to complete that. Oh, why does this look different here? The coloring is different on this input. Still different. I'm not sure why it's showing me the coloring is different. But anyway, I got that. Get that checked off. I see this coloring. I hope it's not going to be an issue. Oh, there's going to be an issue here because I did not say what type of input this is. There, managed to get that in there. All right, next, after the credit card number, add a selection list with the ID month list for the card month field. Make the card month field required. Of course, your credit card month expiration is required. Populate the selection list with the option text month January, February, and so on up to December. For the month, set the field value to an empty string. For all of the months, insert 1 through 12, whichever month it is. So start with the label, right? An empty label. What does it say is the label? There it is. It's like its own step. The label is its own step. Okay. I didn't associate it with the month though, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, now this label is associated with the month list input that I'm just about to make, and it is a selection list. Select, and I'll close the select, give myself some space to work with. The way the selection list works is actually similar to the state, right? We could have done the state as a selection list, but instead we're doing the month as a selection list. Okay, and its ID is month list. And that is going to keep us keep this and this linked together. Okay, the label for month list and the select ID of month list. And oh, this is required, right? Required equals required. And then we need our options to fill in there. Okay, and I'm going to paste those in because we're going to do month and year. We're going to do some more. So just like I did with the states earlier, I'm cheating again with these options, but we'll go over. So each option starts as an option and it has a value. This first one is a value of an empty string, which it says right here. The first one will be an empty string. And we give it a text. The text is what gets displayed to the user. They see this and the computer sees this. Okay? And then we close the option and we go to the next one. The next one, January, the value is 01. It is usually important if you're going to do the values of two-digit numbers, you should use 01, 02, and so on for the single digit ones so that they hold the same places and they work together this way. And if a computer was going to alphabetize them, they would get put in the correct order amongst all the other numbers. So it is somewhat important to do that. And then we just have one for each month of the year. So we can go ahead and get checked in this. Right, pause this video if you need to copy that. All right. Next is the year list. Add a selection list with the ID year list for the card year field. Make the card year field required. Populate the selection list with the years with one blank one for year. Actually, let's have a look at the month one really quickly. All right. The blank one that we put in there, this is the default, and if you leave it selected, it's an empty string. So the person opens it up and they pick whichever one, and now the value will actually be sent with the form. Okay, so moving back to the year, we have this blank one for the year, and then 27, 18, 19, 20, and 21 for the year. Excuse me. Set the field value to an empty string, and for the year options, set their 4-digit year value. So there's no label for this one. I'm going to copy and paste the whole month thing and start working on that for the year list, and I'll change month list to year. That's both required. All right, it's not a month anymore, it's a year. Oh, capitalization counts. Okay, and the values, I need 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Delete all the others. And what the user sees and what the computer sees is going to be the same for this one. We still need to set them both. That's important. All right, so I should be able to get that as well. That was pretty easy, I think. We didn't skip anything there, right? Well, I didn't give either one of these their name. Whew. And MindTap did not even care. Right? They have to have their name. Okay, it says card month and card year field. All right, it addressed it by name. That's its name. If you don't set the name, it's not going to get submitted with the form. All right, so MindTap is so far not been looking for the name, only for the other information. Otherwise, it would not have accepted what I put in there. Right? So we already have some styling here. That's good news. This looks different. I suspect we're going to have to style that ourselves. All right, CSC box. This is the security code, credit card security code. So we have to make a box for that. This is not a select. Their user is going to type that in themselves. So we need to make a label for this one. Nice. We didn't have a label for the last couple, or the last one anyway. All right. And this label is just going to have the text capital CSC. The label needs to be associated, needs to be for the CSC box. Okay, and then we can make the CSC box. It is an input with the ID CSC BOX. That's how we associate these two things together. And the CSC box is going to be named text to input box with the ID, the CSC field, the CSC field, they say, and it's even bolded. So that's going to be the name, the CSC. It is a text, they said, a text input box. So type equals text. User will just type that in normally. We need to follow the pattern of another regular expression, and they've given it to us right here, so I don't have to look at that file. Just copy and paste that. This one is required as well. Required equals required. And we're going to set a maximum length of this to 3 characters and display the placeholder text NNN. Now, maximum length of 3 characters, sure, and the pattern is looking for 3 characters, but clearly whoever wrote this problem does not have an American Express card. They're not 3 characters. So max length, and that's all lowercase, max length equals, and we just give it the value of 3. No problems right there. And a placeholder, they said, we're going to call it NNN because that stands for number, number, number. And inputs are self-closing, so we can close that. Make sure that I didn't miss anything. I think that I'm good with that. Oh, next we need to do two things in this step. So after this is going to be a button element of the submit type. So I'm making a button and I'm closing the button. I think we're going to have something in that button, right? An image. So this button is type submit. We could have an input of type submit, but instead we're having a button of type submit. And that's how we're going to submit this form with an image. And the file is this sbbutton.png. So that's an SR. The image source is that file. Doesn't say anything. Use the alternate text on the image and set that to next. So alternate text, ALT, equals next. This is especially important for this type of button image. Alternate text, if an image for any reason does not download when the user is looking at your page, the alternate text will be displayed in its place. And so this form uses an image for a button, and if for any reason that image didn't download, if that text wasn't there, they would just have this little broken image thing on some browsers, or in other browsers, it would just collapse to nothing, and there'd be nothing for them to click. So we have to have the alt text for this image. We don't always have to have the alt text. They are very useful though, especially for any user who is not downloading their images. It will have the alt text there instead. All right, so I think I've got all of that. I can try to get the check, and we'll take a look at the page as well. Great, that worked. And of course, the next is an arrow. I'm not sure why we're using an arrow for next. Maybe it's a multi-part form. We're just doing the one part though. Now we have to go into the validate style CSS. This is our last page before our final test. So hopefully this gets done quickly. Okay, go to the validate.css file, which I just did. Within the validation section, it's the only section, insert the following style rules to perform inline validation. So we can actually kind of do some validation with just HTML and CSS. We don't necessarily need any JavaScript yet, although we are using some JavaScript. If you remember from an early step, we're adding that SB script. And what is it doing? It is checking the validity with just running this little test. And if the validity check is positive, we'll get a JavaScript alert. And then the return false actually says, don't submit, don't do the normal action of submitting this form. Because remember, our form is submitting to example.com, and they probably don't want us flooding their server with data they didn't expect. So let's get on with the validation. Okay, for every input element that's not a radio type and that has the focus, change the background color to RGB, this value, okay? Hint, use the attribute selector, not type equals radio, to input select elements, to select input elements that are not radio types. Yeah, let's do that. That's not what the answer key has, but that's funny. All right, so for every input element that's not a radio type, input element, it's going to give me the whole thing that is not, parentheses for the not. We'll just go ahead and put my curly braces so I don't forget them. What I put in the not will be everything that is not that will be okay. So I can do a type selector or an attribute selector, and I type in whatever attribute I want, and the attribute I want is type equals radio. Now the example uses single quotes. I'm using double quotes. Let's not get hung up on that. It's going to work either way in this case. All right, so all the inputs that are not this type radio are going to get, oh, also, they're not that, and that has the focus. So not positive if I want to put the focus at the end or in the after the not or before the not. We'll try after the not, see if that works. I think it may not matter, but we're going to try it. Background color equals RGB, and I'm going to just copy and paste this value here, 255, 218, 165. All right, that's the first one. Next, for every input element that is not radio type and that has focus with a valid value, change the background color to this color and display the image file this with no tiling on the right edge of the input box. So I'm going to start by copying and pasting the previous one because it starts out for every input element that's not a radio, just like before, and that has the focus, just like before. This time also that is valid. Okay, another pseudo selector here. We're going to set a different background color, probably green, light green, and display a background image. So we're going to do that all in the background shorthand, not background color. Okay. And the image, the way we do a background image is we type URL function, and inside of that we put the file name or the qualified URL. Okay, and no tiling, which means no repeat. And on the right side. Okay, we can use the keyword right for that. And then the last one, for every input element that's not a radio type, still again, and that has the focus with an invalid value, change the background color to this, display the invalid PNG. Again, no tiling, again on the right edge. So again, we're going to copy and paste this whole thing, change the valid to invalid, change the file name from valid to invalid, and change the RGB code to this RGB code, which is probably something kind of red. It is not. Right? And everything else is the same. And then it says I won't even be tested on this. And I already did it. So that's that step that I won't even be tested on. And if I refresh, I click next, all right, it's invalid. It changes to that color that we set. All right, everything will be invalid unless we put that color in, okay? Next. Next, everything that's required has to be filled in. Select one of these. Card number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Please match the requested format. What did I do? That's the required format, right? They did not. Did they give me a placeholder for that and I didn't do it? No? No placeholder for the credit card number. Oh, are they looking for dashes? Hmm. Oh, that's right. Oh, all right. So it said specifically the card number should start with a particular digit, and I forgot about that. Each one of these credit card number companies, their cards, like Visa, every Visa card starts with a number 4, and they've required that in here. Forgot about that. So my JavaScript is not working that stops this from going, and none of that other stuff works. But and the last step, of course, I'm not going to be tested on. So let's go to the very end and get my final test. I'm not doing the WC3 validator because it's not been kept up to date. My final test should be successful. Everything else has been. All right, it is, and the final test is a visual test, and looks good. It says a 5% difference, but it's not highlighted what the difference is. This is the difference. My radio buttons, I thought my radio buttons looked funny. They're vertical. Let's see if mine look different than. No. Oh, yes, my class name. I missed a capital letter there. It let me go that whole way with that mistake. Sometimes it can have a big mistake and really. Now it doesn't work. Let's put it back. Well, mind tap, you didn't do a good job with that one. Probably another class name that's different. My submit button goes outside the field set. That's what's wrong. A little bug check here. All right. Now I got it. Good one that I'm happy with, even though mind tap accepted my easier one. Okay, well that was T7 case problem 2. There is the finished product and what it should look like, or 0.05% different anyway. All right, and that's going to end the video.